Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special Left Unspoken. Albano here along with Nick Morgasen. So by the time this is uploaded and posted to our social media accounts, it has been some little less than 24 hours. Maybe you're listening to it and it's been 24 hours or a little longer. So we'll just put it as a somewhat 24 hours removed from a big announcement from Major League Baseball. The free agency period is coming closer and closer to its inevitable end. Manny Machado has finally signed. The earth has shaken. The stars have aligned. All the planets are in order. And he is off to San Diego.
Yeah, about that. So, if you were under a rock for the last couple of days, which if you were, I wouldn't blame you because MLB Free Agency has been under a rock lately. And probably during the day, Tuesday, if you're listening to this a few days later now, I was out getting a haircut. And all of a sudden, I get 5 different reports saying Manny Machado has agreed to a deal with the San Diego Padres.
I have the exact time. Oh, at least the exact time I put up the tweet on our UDUP account.
Actually, I think we both did it at about the same time, both of our accounts.
I did it at 12:44 p.m. You did it 4 minutes later.
Right. So we had sources confirming Jeff Passan, Mark Feinsand, Ken Rosenthal, any big name MLB reporter you want to throw out there, all confirming Machado to the Padres, 10 years, $300 million. And we all, and Tom, you, Nick, and I had this ruthless speculation that $300 million in 10 years just doesn't really exist on the free agent market, right? It really doesn't.
Well,
until now.
I was going to say, he got it. He got his wish.
And I hate to say this, and I've said this to a lot of people over the last couple of days with free agency, there was going to be one sucker team out there that was going to pay him.
I mean, yes, you can say, okay, I remember right before we started recording this, you had said the sucker team thing, and I was confused when it came to because I thought you were talking about it from the other perspective of Manny Machado, and my response to you was, well, you can say sucker team for him because, let's face it, yes, he's getting paid. Yes, he has a long-term deal. Although, isn't there an option? I think it's like 5th year or 6th year.
Yeah, it's halfway through, but and this is what I don't like about long-term contracts. It's player option only.
Really?
It's player option only, meaning that he can opt out after 5 years. And whenever I see long-term deals, I feel like it should be mutual option. That's what I think it should be.
In a perfect world, yeah. In a perfect world, it should be mutual option. I know, like in the past couple of weeks, you and Nick have been going back and forth on the show, cap space versus cap floor. I feel like when it comes to long-term deals and for salary, like this is what you're going to need now. You are going to need options. The option contract is what's going to do it. I remember Nick mentioned CC Sabathia last week about 10 years with the Yankees. But remember, it was 7 years originally plus extensions. Options and extensions, I think, are going to be what saves. It's going to be the saving grace for this whole MLB, MLBPA, free agency BS.
That's a whole nother issue, which we'll have to get into in the next episode with Tony Clark and MLBPA, and apparently Rob Manfred coming out and telling the MLBPA to hush because he doesn't want to admit the fact that there's a problem with free agency, in my opinion.
But going back to what I was saying, yeah, you can say Manny Machado. Well, first of all, as Yankees fans here, from the fans' perspective, it's would he have been a great ad? Yeah, talent-wise, but I'm not bothered by it. I'm like that crying kid in the viral video today. So what? We don't need him.
That was a great video. I think SNY actually sourced that completely.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, did I want him? Maybe, yeah. But in the long run, I think that the deal wouldn't have made sense at 10 years, $300 million.
Right. I was going to say, I don't know about 10 years and the million. Like I said, maybe if it was 6 or 7 and you have the options or the extensions to add on there, maybe. I think for this year, he would have been good only because Yankees starting shortstop right now is Troy Tulowitzki. And I mean, if he goes down, yeah, maybe they move Glaber back there. But then if Glaber goes down, then you don't really have anybody.
Right. And I think when people were originally going to be mad at the Yankees because they were talking about how there were going to be lowball offers. We heard Chicago originally at 7 years, like 175. And if that's what he signed for, then the Yankees would have been fools not for getting in on it and at least making an offer. But because the Padres were dumb enough to offer the 10 years, $300 million, and I'll get into another one in a minute,
Right.
which is more obscure than that. It's 10-year contracts are a thing of the past.
Maybe I'm thinking more about your phrase. I mean, and you're thinking about the option. Maybe it's because with the player option, they offered it because, he is a once in a lifetime kind of talent. And, they gave the player option, I guess, because they were like, you know what? Fuck it. At least we'll have him for a certain time. They like San Diego is a small market. Let's face it.
It's
If
very small.
right, if somebody like, not just New York or LA, but like if St. Louis, Philadelphia, freaking Kansas, if they came, walking to Machado with an offer, maybe even a little less, that might have appealed to Machado even more than San Diego, because San Diego is a smaller market. Although it gets interesting when we talk about another deal that he supposedly had on the table. But I mean,
Before we go there, some interesting points you just made and some questions that I had is, first of all, he came out and said, I didn't want to go west. But just to check my geography, because I think I understand geography well, I think San Diego is on the West Coast, right?
Right, but like I was referring to before, like I told you before we started recording, I think he and his agents, I forget his name, he's Boris's rival.
Dan Lozano.
Yeah, I think they finally came to the realization of it's either this, the other offer we're going to get into, or he's going to go play in Japan. So at this point, he got the 300 million in the 10 years he wanted. It's like, you know what? Fuck it. At this point, it's just fuck it. I mean, spring training, not games.
Pitchers and catchers have reported already.
Catchers have reported, fielders have reported. Oakland and Seattle play the first spring training game on Thursday.
Right. So there's so many interesting things about this. Dan Lozano was very strict about how these contract negotiations were handled. I mean, heck, he went after Passan and Nightingale, two of the biggest MLB reporters out there, for apparently getting sources mixed up. But I don't know. This whole thing is, I don't know.
This was one of the most bizarre free agency periods and free agency trackings I think we've had in baseball.
Well, I'll go even more bizarre since we want to talk about money, so to speak. So apparently there was another deal out there for Machado. We heard Chicago was in the mix. They made the move for his cousin, which I can't remember at the moment his name. I think it was Yonder, or was it Yonder Alonso?
You mean? Let me look that up.
But they made a few moves.
You're talking about the White Sox, right?
Yeah, they got his cousin because they were trying to make moves and whatever.
Was it Albert Almora?
I don't remember. It's not exactly important to the story. But so the White Sox apparently made an offer to Machado.
Oh, Yonder Alonso. You're right. Okay. Yonder Alonso. And they got his brother-in-law too, I think.
I think that's him, isn't it? I think. But all right, that's nor here nor there. But so the White Sox made an offer to Machado, 8 years, $250 million, at a higher AAV. And from people who don't understand AAV, it's a higher average annual value than he got from the Padres. But here's the kicker to this deal. So the total value included incentives and vesting options. So it would have made the deal north of $300 million, which is higher than what he got. And looking through the reports I put up on our UDUP news, account, the White Sox offered would reach $350 million if all options were vested and every incentive was reached. So we're talking about two $35 million options at the end of an 8-year contract.
By the way, John Jay. It's Yonder
That's it.
Alonso, his brother-in-law, and John Jay. That was his other guy. But yeah, I mean, I guess it is kind of weird because, you know, he had the options and the opportunities for like some incentives in those deals. I think you said in the 6th year, if he had 500 something plate appearances.
550 plate appearances, those two options would vest.
So I don't know. I think what's going on is, and this is from the reports I've been hearing, and I was listening to radio shows, like I was listening to FAN while at work with Bart, Scott, and Maggie, and then listening to ESPN with Michael K. Although it wasn't much of Michael K because he came in late, so it was Don and Peter for a
Yeah, you picked the wrong day to be out.
He was getting a colonoscopy. Fun fact.
Oh.
But yeah, so basically, from my understanding, or from like looking at the analysis and all that the reporters are saying, and from my gathering my conclusion, it looks like the Padres have one of the best farm systems in baseball.
It's number one.
Right, it's number one. So I guess what's going on is he's looking at some teams like the Yankees, like the Astros, and he thinks that the Padres are going to have the success. You know, he's banking on himself and he's banking on the Padres.
Yeah, well, you could have a number one farm system, but how long does it take a number one farm system to come up and be consistent? What are we talking about? 3 to 4 years?
Did I say that it was going to be a success right away?
No. Right.
Or even a success or even just a success period? No. I'm saying I think that's what's going on. He's banking on himself and he's banking on the Padres farm system.
But the weird part is, so say they get to objectivity, and we're probably talking about halfway through the contract, probably, right?
Yeah.
So the way that this is going to go, basically the first 4 or 5 years are going to be useless on this contract.
I don't know if you can say useless because at the very least it's a small market team getting some attention. I think the issue is, if we're going to talk about fault from that perspective, not so much on the Padres, but more on Manny, because let's face it, he's not going to win a World Series in his contract.
No way.
This reminds me, and I think they were talking about this on the radio too, this reminds me so much of the Robinson Cano thing when he
it does
10 years and went to Seattle, and what happened to him?
He disappeared.
Exactly.
He disappeared into the deep dark abyss of Seattle, and now look, he's back in New York because he got traded to the Mets. Now, of course, we have to remember, I think Robinson was a little bit older when he got his 10-year contract. I think he was 31, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing to look at is like, and maybe we can talk about this on the next episode that's coming this weekend. Because this was also brought up when I was listening to the radio and all the sports talk radio. You're not going to see many guys get their first free agency anymore when they hit 30 or 31. It's all about now 26, 27 in the prime of your career. I know the Yankees, because there are some concerns and they have to save up money for when guys like Judge come up and they're buying.
He's going to be 30.
Right, because, well, what they're doing is they're buying out
arbitration years.
Right. They just did that with Severino. Now, the question is, would Judge take that, or would he want to become a free agent? Because if they buy out his arbitration years and extend it himself, he won't hit free agency till, 32, 33, which at that point, no one's going to want you. I was just looking through the main free agents, still available.
Well,
only 3 A-level free agents still available. The rest, I mean, yeah, they may be good, but then there are some in some cases, like they're old, and that's why the teams don't want them.
But we're missing a key point here, which is it seems like what I call the death age in this sport is now 30. Because
I wouldn't just say this sport. I would just say sports.
No, but I'm talking about in general, when you hit free agency. In the NBA, you could pretty much hit free agency from 28 to 32 and still be considered halfway decent. In Major League Baseball, because of analytics, now they're saying it doesn't make sense to sign someone at the age of 30 to a long-term contract because it's not going to be worth it down the line.
Now that's fair. And I mean, hockey, I can see adding another 2 or 3 years too. But I mean, if you add the NFL and with its free agency, that and, prime of the career, that can lower it. So pretty much the average when it comes to prime of a career, free agency, 30. Once you hit 30, it's like a death blow.
Now, in the NFL, you see older guys sometimes get more chances because it's not fully guaranteed. You can cut anybody in the NFL whenever you want.
Right. And anybody can rebound at any point. Look at C.J. Anderson this season.
Right. So just looking at it seems like the key age is 30. If you don't sign someone to a long-term contract before 30, you're not going to make that money anymore. It's just because of the way analytics have been.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's always ways you can do contracts. I mean, because you're like, oh, you don't want to do the 10-year contract. Well, you could also front load money.
That's what a lot of teams are doing. But to go back to the White Sox deal for a second, if this was a real deal on the table, which no one has really 100% confirmed. I mean, Ken Rosenthal put it out there if there was source, but if he was on the money hound, and that's where he was, that was the plan. Padres offered me $300 million. Oh, I'm going to go grab that rather than go on a ready-made playoff team. Well, we already understand you didn't want to go west, and you totally fucked that one up and went west.
Well, can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I think he could have been with the Dodgers still. I think the Dodgers could have brought Corey Seager back and tried to make some room in the infield. But you know what? I'll simply say it. He screwed himself up. He screwed himself.
Yeah, but apparently he's not a good guy either. Apparently there's a lot of guys on the Dodgers that said he wasn't a good teammate.
Exactly. By his attitude, by all the comments with the hustle, and let's be honest, for not performing up to level in the World Series. If he had brought that World Series, then you know what the Dodgers would have said. Forget the attitude stuff. Forget all that BS. He brought us a World Series. He'd still be there. But the fact is, the Dodgers got humiliated in that World Series, other than the amazing Game 3.
Right. And I saw you put out a tweet earlier. I put out a tweet when the signing happened. I basically said Manny Machado will always be a loser regardless of how big the contract is. You sign with a Padres team that hasn't made the playoffs in years. You aren't playing for championships. It was all for the money. Your ego is your worst enemy. So,
let's be real here. Let's talk about it from the fans' perspective, because you know how I've been in that issue with the cap salary and cap floor. I've been taking the side of the fans of, millionaires versus billionaires. If you were offered $300 million, wouldn't you go, Wes?
I mean, I feel like I'd be a little more open to perspective. If that was the best offer, I would say, all right, I got to look at the best offer. But at the same time, is it the right situation? Because if you go into the right situation, you could make more money by winning.
I'm just saying, and trying to keep all perspectives open. And again, from the talk radio stuff listening today, and for our listeners, it's easier to go by championships as like the price tag when you're a fan. But when you're actually playing, and you see all the dollars that you could make, does that 11-year-old dream of wanting to play for your favorite team still hold up? And you have, like, let's face it, there's 300 million reasons now why Manny Machado is out in San Diego.
Well, here's the big thing that I feel. Baseball used to be a legacy sport where you would play on a team for 10 to 15 years, a la Ken Griffey Jr., Edgar Martinez, Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera. All these guys would want legacies.
Well, you don't really see that too much in just sports, period, now.
Well, my point being that guys like Manny Machado signing for 10 years in San Diego after being with Baltimore for many years, and that doesn't exist. There's no such thing as building a team legacy for yourself anymore. Right, you go where the biggest contract is now.
Right, I'm just saying you don't see like Derek Jeter with the Yankees, Phillip Rivers with the Chargers, Henrik Lundqvist with the New York Rangers. You don't see that much too often anymore in sports. I mean, LeBron James, probably the biggest athlete in the world, the biggest star of the NBA to face. We've seen his free agency. We've tracked his free agency last year. We all know about the decision 2.0, 3.0. I'm just saying, it's no longer a whole thing about, being at home, playing for your hometown team or playing for your favorite team or playing for one team for so many years. The days out in sports are gone because of all the money and all the contracts that are
The,
going to
the
blow
one
up.
the one difference with him though is at least he won a championship with his home team. With the others, they're not even sticking around wherever they were, where their legacy was
Right.
supposedly supposed to be.
Right. I think the only argument you could make against LeBron when it comes to that, putting up against something is for the first two championships, he went away from the hometown team.
Well, I think because he finally had to get away because and this happens to players that they know they're not going to win. They love their hometown. They will do anything for their hometown, but you have to move on and win, and then you can come back. The pressure is off you, and then you can win at home, like he proved. But this whole thing with Manny Machado, it seems like he doesn't care about legacy. To him, it's more about attitude, ego, money, and that type of situation. Now, going to a quote from Kenny Williams, who's the GM of the White Sox, on the $300 million report, he came out and said, quote, evidently, that's what it took, and San Diego stepped up to that level. That level wasn't feasible to us because we still have to project putting together a total winning roster. So, and the Phillies GM had a very similar quote to that. So, and they said that was over projection. So the White Sox and the Phillies both said that the $300 million number was over projection. So what does that tell you?
I understand. I think the only difference between those two teams are the Phillies. Are they a strong team? Yes, but they're not going to make a World Series run either anytime soon. Maybe in a couple of years, so perhaps sooner than a little sooner than what San Diego can provide. The White Sox, I mean, I think honestly it's tough because yes, he could have been making more money with the White Sox than he could have with the Padres, but the White Sox I think are an even less ready team than the Padres.
Right. And I think the White Sox and the Phillies at this point have priced themselves out of Harper. Now, we'll get to Harper in a second because
I was gonna say, really, you think even the Phillies have done that?
well,
We'll talk about it in a second. Yeah.
yeah, we'll get to that in a second because I think they both had the White Sox had something interesting to say and the Phillies had something interesting to say. But now with the way Machado's deal went down at 10 years, $300 million, you think Boris is going to go second fiddle to Manny Machado?
Oh no, no. Let's face it. Harper and Boris, they're probably doing backflips now because you know what they're going to request now? 300, something like $310 million.
No, I heard numbers of 320 to 325.
But
They're
regardless, but regardless,
they're trying to reach that Stanton deal.
right. But what they're trying to do is be the highest, get the highest contract now. Remember, this past NFL free agency or NFL offseason, Aaron Donald had the highest paid defensive contract, and that was only for one day because the next day, Khalil Mack trade happened, and then Khalil Mack became the highest paid defensive player in football.
You realize that the competitive stars in Major League Baseball is like the competitive quarterbacks in the NFL who
Right.
look at it, Stafford, Flacco, Matt Ryan, all those deals came right upon one another.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think at some point we did this podcast. It was Matt Stafford. Then a few months later, Matt Ryan had it, and then a few months later, Aaron Rodgers had it.
So, and now it's handcuffing teams because of cap, and now Major League Baseball. And I'm not going to go into the whole thing that Nick and I argue about, but just to make one point, excuse me, about how I feel that the competitive balance tax is causing issues because like you said, from the perspective of the fans, why is my team not spending money on these guys and why are the analytics taking over? I'll let you know a little secret, okay? which is competitive balance tax stops teams from spending money. I'm sorry, it does.
You know what? Honestly, I'm so busy, so I don't really have the time. But if one of our Unspoken Nation members could help out, I want to know something. Which ballpark is the cheapest to buy 4 tickets, 4 hot dogs, 4 sodas, and a beer?
You're basically talking about like a family of 4, right?
Right. The family of 4 needs to afford to go to a game. So
Well, let's put it this way. Which is a family of 4 can't afford to go to a baseball game. It's only like for the hardcores like you and I, where I've been going on MLB stadium tours over the past couple of years. I've probably done about 9 to 10 stadiums now.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm going to have to put that one on the list maybe for this season.
I was going to say, and the funny thing is, you're only including the major league teams. I mean, imagine if you're trying to do the minor league stadiums too. But I mean, at this point, people, if you want to go see baseball games, at this point, go to a minor league game.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be much easier to afford. Just if you remember when A-Rod and Manny were down in the minors, when they came back, you remember how much those tickets were?
Yeah.
I mean, but I don't know. This whole thing with how the Machado bullshit went down, you realize that the reason it took so long is because the agents were competing over who was going to sign first.
It was a standoff, basically.
And
like I said, Harper and Boris are doing backflips now because, you know what? Let's face it. For those of you who are listening, when this goes up or a few hours after this goes up or whenever, like in that first day, I think it's imminent. It's only a matter of time, probably right before we begin recording episode 108 on Friday, that we're going to hear Bryce Harper signed somewhere.
Oh, it's basically when the first thing drops, everyone else drops because because the first person sets the market for everything else.
I would not be surprised because we're planning to record episode 108 on Friday. So I think right before we do the episode, someone's going to sign, and then either Keuchel or Kimbrel will sign in the middle of our recording.
The problem is, the market has been pretty much set for position players. Who's your pitcher that's setting the market? There hasn't been one yet.
No. No, there is, but it's bad. Let's call it for what it is. You know who's setting the market but has overpriced the market?
But look at the 2 guys who are at the top of the pitching market, which are Keuchel, who wants 6 years. Kimbrel wants 6 years.
No, but I'm talking about Patrick Corbin. When the Nats jumped and signed Patrick Corbin for that ridiculous contract early in the free agency,
was that 6 years also?
Let me double check that contract.
It was 5 or 6 years at like $120 million, if I had to.
He signed a 6-year, $140 million deal,
which is absurd
for somebody. If it was for a talent like, I don't know if Keuchel's worth that money, but like next year, Chris Sale is going to be available and Justin Verlander is going to be available. I mean, I know you're shaking your head. I'm just saying, one of those guys that are more worthy of a 6-year, $140 million than fucking Patrick Corbin. At least Chris Sale, and that's what I was referring to before about the remaining free agents. Like currently, it's Harper, Keuchel, and Kimbrel are A level. Like other guys, like Marwin Gonzalez is available. I know he's a position player, but I'm just saying.
No, but multifaceted position player.
I get it, but he's B level. He is not a big name star. He is not going to be a make or breaker.
Well, right. That's the problem. Everything is looking for stars. But the only thing that might stop Chris Sale is Chris Sale has a little bit of elbow issues, shoulder issues. But I think Chris Sale is that ace pitcher that I'm sure the Red Sox would want back, or any team would want going forward. But look what happened to Clayton Kershaw. I mean, the guy signed a massive deal. The guy can't stay healthy.
And the guy, let's also face it, the guy can't pitch in the postseason.
No, he's the opposite of, oh my God, what's his name on the Giants?
Bumgarner?
Bumgarner, who has his own arm and elbow, shoulder issues, but won the World Series, pitched 5 innings in relief to win a game. But the thing is, the pitching market is, I hate to say it, the only word I can come up with is volatile, because these pitchers are getting long-term deals and they can't make it to the end of the contract. Same thing with these position players.
So let's go then. I'm not sure how much longer we got. Maybe this might be the last point, but looking at the rest of the free agency, Bryce Harper, as I said, it's probably imminent. That means Harper will sign somewhere. And I'm not sure what your reports have said, but the things I have read, it seems like it's down to the Phillies, and it is down to, of course, the Nationals, where he once played.
Pretty much. That's all we've pretty much heard at this point. I mean, the White Sox have basically priced themselves out. That was a name that you heard all off season, that the White Sox were going to try and make a run.
Well, remember when the Cubs were thought to be the favorite early on, before last season, before any of this free agency stuff, because everyone was like, oh, him and Chris Bryant are buddies. And you know what's funny enough, in a cruel sense of irony, the Cubs said we didn't go for Machado Harper because basically we're out of money and we need to save it, because one of the guys that they want to do, work on is keeping Chris Bryant.
Well, basically what happened was the ownership of the Cubs basically said, we've already have enough money on this payroll, and they got screwed now because of the Hayward deal.
Yeah, that's honest.
Can you imagine getting screwed by Jason Hayward, and if you didn't have that deal, they're probably in the market for one of those two guys.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Bryce Harper.
I mean, like I said, of all irony, all of a sudden now they can't work. Yes, because of Hayward, but because they want to keep Chris Bryant, the guy who they thought was going to help lure Harper to the Midwest and to Chicago. So,
you know what though, and I'll let you finish that point, but I was just thinking of it. The competitive balance tax is now turning into the salary cap for the NBA, where it's making it tougher to have 2 to 3 stars on a team, which a lot of teams are trying to do now, but it's hard because of the cap. Basically, the competitive balance tax has become a cap for Major League Baseball. As weird as that sounds.
Well, I mean, there are NBA teams who can work around it. Golden State.
Well, actually, they're going to have an issue with that, but I'll leave that for another day.
I was going to say, but you know what? For the last 4 years, they've made it work. So
yeah, they made it work somehow. But go ahead.
Yeah, but just saying, it's down to the Phillies and Nationals. I said the Nationals because technically that $300 million and $300+ million offers that they made, those aren't off the table, right?
Well, I'll go one step further, as I started to say that there were some quotes from the Philadelphia GM, and I can't remember his name at the moment, but he came out and basically said that we're outpriced for Bryce Harper. And
Matt Klentak?
Matt Klentak, right. Where he basically came out and said I can't remember, I'm just kind of paraphrasing that, that for Machado, the $300 million was over what we were willing to spend. So here's the issue now that you come into. If that was too much for Machado, Harper's going to get more. So if you're not willing to spend that for Machado, does that mean you're out on Harper?
Or did it mean they had their eye on Harper more than they did Machado?
No, but they're saying that money was too much.
I know, but I'm saying, are they willing to do it for Harper but not Machado? Was Harper more their priority than Manny Machado was?
It's hard to tell because now Harper has come out and said, I'm not sure about Philadelphia. So is this a whole cat and mouse game?
I was going to say, so are we just, like you say, a cat and mouse game, and it's just going to end, same as it ever was? We're going to, instead of this whole drama and saga of, where Bryce Harper's going to go next, he's just going to stay in Washington.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised, and if I'm the Nationals, I would do this. I would say, sorry, that offer's off the table. You kind of blew us off to go test free agency.
And then Harper would be forced to go to Japan.
If I'm telling you, the Nippon Ham Fighters, I'm sure, are waiting for one of these guys.
I've said that for the last 2 weeks.
But this whole thing with Harper, and I've said this to someone earlier today. Do you notice that a bunch of the Scott Boras clients get bad reputations because of their contracts, right?
Well, look who's the man behind the curtain.
Well, no, there's a reason I'm bringing it up. So people think that these guys who sign these long-term contracts, it's their fault because they're money grubbers and whatever. I don't think it's their fault.
I
I
mean,
think it's Scott Boras.
I was gonna say, could it be their fault? Maybe. I think it's Boris is in their ear.
But I've had a problem with Scott Boras for many years. I've come out publicly before and said that Scott Boras is the evil genius of sports agents.
The Vince McMahon of sports agents.
And I'm pissed off at him. I don't like him.
Well, remember last year in free agency, and we had coined that phrase BSBS. That basically Major League Baseball had a case of BSBS because Rob Manfred had a case of blame Scott Boras syndrome.
Yeah, really. And just, you know what? I get it. I know he's a great agent. That's why people want him. And just to go back quickly, do you remember when A-Rod was coming in for his second round of negotiations after, I think, the Red Sox-Rockies World Series?
Yeah.
That I think his contract expired like 10 days after the World Series.
Right. Well, I'm thinking from a Yankees perspective, that's another positive that comes out of the Machado and Harper. You don't have to blame Machado and Harper. You don't have to deal with Scott Boras.
Well, they already deal enough with Scott Boras as it is.
Right.
I mean, but I don't know. I read a lot of rumors that could Harper take a short-term deal, like 2 years, $80 million? Would the Yankees go and make that offer? To be honest, I don't think they need to.
I don't think they need to. Would they though? I think if they wait, like let's pretend somehow this goes another week or two and Harper's still not signed and it's getting to March, I think they would sneak in an offer, some ridiculous offer just to have him.
I mean, that would be sick having a lefty hitter like him in the short porch and right.
But I'm saying I don't think they need him, and that's why they're willing to wait. Because, like it's at this point, you know what it is? If something like that happened, it'd be like the Giancarlo Stanton trade last year. Like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. All of a sudden, out of, no pun intended, left field. Oh, well then.
Wow, I just saw a tweet here from Jared Weaver. We all remember that name, right?
Yep.
Used to be an Angel. I think he was a Padre, actually, too. He put this out 42 minutes ago. It said, if Machado got $300 million, then Mike Trout's going to get $1 billion.
Oh, that's another thing. Another point I have forgotten. Mike Trout's going to be the happiest motherfucker in the world. Sorry for the language here, but let's be real here.
He's probably doing backflips right now.
Mike Trout is probably going to make $1 billion in free agency if MLB doesn't have a strike. Well,
that's something you, Nick, and I have discussed in the last episode, that we think Major League Baseball is going to hit the strike. Right. And the last point we'll make.
What's the sad part about it, though?
What?
Yeah, about all that? Now, we can talk about $1 billion being ridiculous, but like a big contract like the ones we're discussing, a talent like Mike Trout would be worthy of something like that, because here's why.
Box office.
He's young. His name, his brand. Yes, Mr. Manfred, maybe you want to work on his branding and everything and his name value, but he doesn't need that. He is, let's call it what it is. He is this baseball generation's version of Derek Jeter. He is the clean-cut, great five-tool player that somebody would want.
Right, and for some reason I'm forgetting. Who was the commissioner before Manfred?
Bud Selig,
who I actually think, for all the bad things that he did, I actually think he was good at the marketing aspect of baseball. And we don't see that. Manfred is more of the legal aspect of baseball and dealing with the steroids, dealing with the allegations. He's not the marketer, so to speak.
I'm trying to think of it. He's a good iron fist, but...
Well, that's even questionable at times.
I know, but I'm just saying, he's an iron fist, but outside of that, it's kind of lacking when comparing to Selig so far.
But the last point I'll make here is the MLBPA. I don't know if you saw those reports, how Tony Clark basically came out and blew up the commissioner's office over the whole free agency issue. Did you see that?
Yeah.
It's hard to tell. And I'll use what you said. We're basically heading for a strike and the CBA.
Insert that SpongeBob clip. We're going on a strike. We're going on a strike.
But I think it's accurate. I think that with free agency, as you said, and we've all said in the last couple of episodes, no one wants to sign these guys. Well, we'll go on 1-year contracts and see how it goes. Well, let's put it this way.
Mike Moustakas just did that for the second year in a row.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just free agency is not what it used to be. There's no such thing as A-Rod's 10-year, $300 million contract plus $5 million per incentive anymore.
And you know what's funny? It wasn't even the Yankees that caused a lot of his contracts off. We're talking about the Texas Rangers.
Right. But in general, like Manny Machado and Bryce Harper, remember we said like 3 or 4 years ago, or we heard 3 or 4 years ago that these guys were going to be the next $400 and $500 million players.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike Trout, oh, well, whatever these guys get, we could probably put 2 or 3 times on that. That's not going to happen.
Right. I was going to say, that's the thing. I feel like with Trout and his free agency stuff, it all comes down to the strike. If they somehow avoid a strike, Mike Trout is going to be the highest paid motherfucker. And guess what? You're saying how we're saying nobody's going to pay for these guys. I think when Mike Trout hits free agency, everyone's going to open their paychecks.
And don't be surprised. Like I could see the Yankees getting in there. The team that's definitely going to be the watch, even though we keep saying that this offseason, is who? Philadelphia. He's an Eagles fan, and he's from Philadelphia.
Right, but he's from Jersey.
He's from Jersey, but he's a big Philly fan.
But he was also a big Yankees fan.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
So he's got that classic central jersey right there. Like he's got one in one direction one way, and then the other direction the other town. So it's like,
look at the fucking Mets. I hate to go here for a second, but the Mets, Mike Puma, who I think writes for the Post, I think he covers the Mets for the Post, put out a statement which I grabbed because I thought it was very interesting. He said Mets weren't disappointed to hear Machado is heading to the Padres instead of the NL East. Said one representative of the Mets, quote, "Now let Harper sign with the Giants and call it a winter." So I basically took that and I quoted on top of that and said, when the Mets have an ownership that is cheap, you would rather let once-in-a-generation players go by rather than make a run at them.
Two-parter to that. Oh, okay, first explain your...
Basically what I'm saying is the Mets have basically screwed up all these negotiations because, first of all, they're not in on it. And two, they're such a cheap fucking ownership that they're never going to go anywhere. They're just going to keep buying spare parts.
Two-parter response. Number one, I think the Mets will probably go after Trout. I think, like I just said, with Trout, legitimately, every team will offer him a blank check. Like, okay, let's pretend for some reason the Diamondbacks offer him a blank check. And then you're going to hear the Rockies, no, here's our blank check. Yankees, no, here's our blank check. Phillies, no, here's our blank check. Mets, here's our blank check. Red Sox, a blank check.
Trout is that, I guess you could say, is that once-in-a-generation player, I guess you would have to say, right?
I just thought of a good comparison. He is... Now, I don't... When you played Monopoly, the board game, did you ever do the auction? Or
somewhat, sometimes.
Okay, but you know at least the rule, right? That a property can go to auction.
You basically bid until someone gets it.
Right. Mike Trout is Boardwalk on auction.
Oh, God. Well, I was going to say that it's more like free parking, like all the money that goes to free parking. You finally land on the free parking space.
Yes, but these teams are going to be using that money from free parking to acquire.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to use those investments from those hotels that they build to get. But I don't know. Mike Trout will get the money, but we all thought Harper was going to. There's not as many teams that lined up for Harper as we thought.
I know, which is kind of weird.
You know why that's weird? Because everyone thought the Yankees were going to be the market leader and test. They're not the same Yankees. They're smarter, more efficient than they were in the past.
Oh, you just reminded me of my second thing, by the way, the second part. Well, the Yankees are kind of happy that Machado's going out west. You know why? Because they only have to play Well, this coming season, they play the NL West, but they only have to play in 3 games, and then they don't have to see him for another 3 years.
Well, yeah, it's every 3 years they rotate the all the
So
division.
I know. So I'm saying, if what's it called? If the Yankees don't land some of these big name guys, what they're at least going to hope is they go to the National League and they go, they go Western.
I mean, it'd be interesting if Harper ended up in Philly because the Yankees and Philly play quite a bit over the years. But I don't know. This is free agency has been like Russian roulette. You don't know which hole's going to open and who's going to fall into it.
Oh, you're talking about the game show Russian roulette.
Yeah, basically.
I thought you were talking about Russian roulette.
Well, the game. I used to watch the game show all the time. It used to be fun watching people fall through the holes.
Of course, it was for you.
But I don't know. But basically, to put a bow on this whole thing, Manny Machado, 10 years, $300 million with the Padres. You're probably going to see Harper drop next just because Boris is probably chomping at the bit to get this deal done. And I'll say it's somewhere between 315 to 325 million.
I'll say 310 to 325.
So I think that'll drop in the next couple of days just because spring training is here.
Right. So final thought, I mean, as a neutral party, as someone from trying to be at least, I mean, 10 years, $300 million. Like I said, 300 million reasons why to play in San Diego. Also, San Diego, yes, it's not, in terms of like a location, yes, it's not a big city like New York. Yes, it's not as sunny as Miami. But you know what? San Diego's still a nice place. The only downside is he's never going to win a World Series while he's there. And let's be real. Maybe he's even shot his Hall of Fame stuff because not just the attitude stuff, but let's be real. How many Hall of Fame players do you associate with San Diego?
Tony Gwynn.
Tony Gwynn and Trevor Hoffman.
Right.
That's it. But there's like other guys there.
And maybe Bruce Bochy, depending on how you look at his career.
Well, we'll talk about his retirement, I guess, on the upcoming episode. But like all the other players who were with San Diego and are in the Hall of Fame all made themselves on other teams. Mike Piazza, Mets and the Dodgers. Greg Maddux, the Braves. Raleigh Fingers, the A's. Dave Winfield, the Yankees, and
the Pirates, I think. Toronto, yeah.
But you get my point. Basically, outside of Tony Gwynn and Trevor Hoffman, all the other Hall of Famers that once played on the Padres made their name elsewhere. Manny Machado, I will always unless the Padres have a big surge, I will probably always view Machado more as an Oriole than a Padre.
Unless he wins like 3 World Series in that 10-year contract.
Even if he wins 1 World Series,
No, I'm saying unless he did something like out of the ordinary, winning 3 World Series in 10 years, which we know is not going to happen.
Or even if he doesn't win a World Series, if he made some achievement, like, I don't know, if he joined the 3,000 hit club, if he got into the top 5 home runs.
Yeah, most of his stuff is done with Baltimore. Now, I hate to say that. I just remembered one last thing, which is now that people were saying, is he going to try harder now that he's got a contract? No, he's not. He had all these issues. He spiked, I don't remember who it was at first base, but he had those issues, sliding into second base or hurting someone, not running down hard to first base. Now that he's got the contract guaranteed, he's not going to try. It's going to be worse now that he has the long-term contract.
Well, what's funny is you mentioned that, and I can answer your question about who he spiked, but The Score put out an article while I'm talking about this, that point, while I'm transitioning to that point, 6 series to watch for Manny Machado. Number 1, the home opening series against the Giants, obviously, because that's the first games in a Padre uniform. Number 2, May 14th and May 15th, when he returns to Los Angeles to play the Dodgers. May 27th through the 29th, that would be the 3-game series in the Bronx against the Yankees. Number 4 would be June 25th and June 26th. They go to Baltimore.
Oh,
so that would be interesting. August 16th through the 18th, when the Padres play Philadelphia and Philadelphia. And then number 6 is when they go to Milwaukee to play the Brewers, September 16th through the 19th. And you're talking about when he stepped on Jesus Aguilar's leg when he was running the first.
Yeah, the Brewers, who's a young star in his own right. But I don't know. It's been a crazy free agency. I think we just want the Major League Baseball season. And I'll let you guys in on something else because I want to work on this with you guys. I'm in a fantasy league with some of my coworkers coming up this season.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you and Nick, and maybe we'll throw it out there to our Unspoken Nation to do the live draft with me.
That would be something.
I think it's coming up on March 10th. It's at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. It's on a Sunday, so we'll definitely all be here. And maybe we could work on the live draft together that I'm in. But quickly, Manny Machado fantasy value down, right?
I wouldn't say too much. I would say either he stays where he is or goes
because of the ballpark. Because of Petco Park.
I know, because it's more pitcher friendly. I understand. So here's what I'll say: he will not go up. He will either stay where he is or he will go down a little bit, only a little bit, because number one, it depends on some fantasy scoring stuff, but also number two, I mean, it's still Manny Machado. It's still one of the best.
How many IBBs do you think he has this year?
I don't play with IBB, so
intentional base on balls.
Oh, IBB. Okay.
I'm saying I'm talking about for the sake of just the year, not without fantasy. How many times do you think
you're talking about intentional walks?
Yeah, because of him being the big time hitter. How many he's going to get walked a ton because he's really going to be the big hitter in the lineup. I mean, you have Hosmer, but
I know. I'm just weird because now that I'm thinking, I don't remember seeing too many intentional walks in baseball last year.
But I'm just saying some people might look at him and say, well, he's the big time hitter. We can strike Eric Hosmer out because he's a strikeout machine, but we'll just walk around Machado so we don't have to face him.
I know. No, I get what you're saying. I'm just saying it's weird because now that you mention it, I don't remember seeing a lot of
There wasn't as many. You're right.
I could see him getting walked sometimes. I just don't know how often.
I guess we'll have to wait and see, but let's put it this way. We have a lot to look forward to in the Major League Baseball season. What's our next preview in the next episode, just so we can
for our part 2 of our 2019 season preview?
Yeah.
We're going to stay in the West. However, we are going to go to the American League West. Although, I guess with this news, we can review our NL West ones a little bit, but we're primarily going to go to the American League.
Yes, as we're getting closer, because as of now, I think we're about a month or so away from the season starting in Japan.
Yes, we're about a month away from I know it's not the official start of baseball. It's not the opening day, but
those are the official games. That opens the season.
I know. No, but I mean, it's not March 29th. March 29th, I think, is when
in the U.S., that's when the official – right, but I think we have 2 games.
What Nick is referring to is I think there are 2 American League West teams heading to Japan to play.
Yeah, the Athletics and the Mariners.
Oh, the guys who start on spring training.
Right.
But the Athletics and Mariners are going to play early next month a 2 or 3 game series that will count for the regular season.
It's a week before the actual games here in the U.S. start.
Right.
So
funny enough, we mentioned that, and there was the news last month of more international games during the season, like the Yankees and Red Sox are going to be going over to London for a series next season.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know how I feel about that. We'll save that for the episode, though, because we're running out of time here. But we have that preview. We have a bunch of other stuff coming up in the next episode, including the AAF running out of money. Made me laugh. We'll get to that one. We have a bunch of baseball news. We have the Machado news. Maybe we'll have Harper news in the next episode. And I guess we'll just take it from there. It's been a crazy week.
Yeah, so let's end it here. Nick Morgasen, I'm Tom Albano. We'll see you on episode 108 this weekend. Until then, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.